Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Lunch and Learn webinar series. Today, we're going to have a presentation on 4-H and risk management, how to keep everyone safe. Today's presentation is being facilitated by Sarah Kleiman, our 4-H Program Director. Before I turn this over to Sarah, I do want to let everyone know that we are recording the session today, and it will be posted to the 4-H website for any of you who would like to review the material again or possibly share it with others, other volunteers, or even some teen leaders that you have. And our next webinar series will be on June 13th, talking about experiential and inquiry-based learning. So I would like to pass the mic over to Sarah Kleiman in today's presentation.
Thanks so much, Lauren. Appreciate it. So as Lauren mentioned, today's webinar is on 4-H and risk management and how to keep everybody safe. And the goals of the session for today, since we only have a short period of time and risk management is a very large topic, is to know where to find key information and key resources, and then also what pieces of information, of all of the pieces of information, you need to really consider in order to keep everyone safe. And that includes 4-H members, parents, yourself as volunteers, and spectators at our various events. So the first piece is to think about 4-H and all of our opportunities in a culture of safety. We are never going to be able to reduce all of the risks that are out there. It's just simply not possible. But we can do what we can to plan ahead and make sure that we work proactively to try to eliminate as many as possible. An example that I just learned today is that one of our 4-H programs is putting off hot air balloons. And it just so happens that this location is near an airport and flight patterns. And so in thinking through, the person in charge was thinking about could those interfere with the flights, the airlines? Could the materials pose a hazard to animals? Will they be part of, end up in our trash? And so thinking through all those elements of our programs is incredibly important ahead of time so that you can make sure and put plans in place to eliminate any sort of risks. So if you think about it, our programmings rely on these following things: people, facilities, activities, as well as weather, money, illnesses, all sorts of things. And again, as I said, we're never going to be able to eliminate all of the possibilities that might come our way, but with some advanced planning, we can certainly work to try to reduce what might happen. And I'm going to go through these main categories in today's presentation and then again show you where you can find more information so that you can explore them a little bit further. So first with people, our volunteers are incredibly crucial to fulfilling the mission of 4-H. We simply can't do it without our volunteers, and that also includes parents oftentimes. Thinking about people, we need to make sure that our volunteers are screened with background checks so that we understand whether or not there might be any risks to the participants. We look at ratios in terms of number of chaperones and number of youth to adults. And all of this really leads to general youth protection, how we can keep our kids and our members as safe as possible in our programs. The other thing to keep in mind too is that a lot of the policies and procedures that we have in place is not just to keep the youth protected, but it's also for the adults' protection as well. If you're ever in a situation as an adult and there's only one child who may not be your own child there, and for whatever reason they may say that you did something, as there was a second adult present, you have that backup protection. And so you don't ever want to get into a situation where it's a he said, she said, and so you always want to protect yourself just as much as the youth. So let's look at a few specifics. Again, volunteers are screened, and they are expected to adhere to a code of conduct and program policies that are outlined in a manual that is up on our website that talks all about the various policies for 4-H. And infraction of any of those codes or failure to follow those policies could result in dismissal of volunteer duties. That's pretty drastic, and that rarely ever happens. And so what's the best possibility is that you go ahead and look at those policies that are up online and review them. And if there's any questions, you reach out to your 4-H educator because we certainly don't want to have to ask any of our volunteers to step down, since everybody does have a critical role to play to make 4-H opportunities happen. Key pieces of information: 4-H volunteers should never be alone with youth for the reason I just described. There should always be another adult present at 4-H meetings or events, and ideally that other adult, whether it's a parent or a full volunteer, should also be screened. If there's an emergency situation and you need to step away for whatever reason, then the other adults may find themselves alone with youth, and of course we need to make sure that that adult has been screened as well. So if you do have parents who are often at club meetings and sometimes take on leadership roles, it would be advisable that those also go ahead through our screening process, and you should reach out to your 4-H educator to figure out how to go ahead and do that. Chaperones for events, there should always be ratios of youth to adults, and they do change based upon the ages of the youth. For example, for youth that are ages 15 plus, we're at a ratio of 1 to 8. No, I'm sorry, 1 to 10. For youth that are between ages 11 and 14, it's a 1 adult to 8 youth chaperone ratio. As we get younger, it gets less for youth that are ages 8 to 10, 1 to 6, and then a 1 to 5 ratio for our Clover Bud members for most activities. And I say most activities because some, such as Eastern states, do have their own regulations. And again, it's advisable to look at our policies up online, and then also what the specific policies are of any specific event that might be organized, because they are going to change. Let's see. Again, 2 adults present for club meetings. Our chaperones should be at least 19 years of age or older, depending on the events. And again, there it's also a common sense rule. If you have 4-H members that are age 18 and you have a volunteer leader that's age 19, they're awfully close in age to that member. And so in that sort of a setting, it's advisable that the chaperone is a little bit older, that there's more of an age group, or excuse me, age gap between the member and the volunteer role. And so that's another thing that you can reach out to your 4-H educator to discuss through. Overnight activities where youth are sleeping in tents, that's another situation where we have very specific policies, again, just to make sure that everybody is as safe, and we eliminate possibilities where people might find themselves in challenging situations. Again, depending upon the age of the youth and the type of events where you're at, the policy is a little bit different. And so those policies are spelled out clearly in our manual, and I'll show you exactly where to find that. When you get into a car, too, that's also a unique situation where adults should never drive alone with only one child in the car for 4-H purposes unless that child is their own. An ideal scenario is that there's at least 2 youth in the car, and ideally in the back seat as well, with the idea that the adult, the driver, is not able to do much while they're driving. So again, any questions, go ahead and reach out to your 4-H educator, and we'll walk through whatever the various scenario is. Facilities and accommodations. There's a variety of things that can pop up in this larger topic area. Contracts. You don't want to find yourself in a situation where you personally are signing a contract, let's say, for renting out an ice skating rink. Because if anything happens, if you yourself signed, you would be liable, not the 4-H program. Even I, as a 4-H director and an employee of the University of Vermont, I'm not allowed to sign contracts. So if you find yourself needing to get a contract, you want to go ahead and send that to your 4-H educator, and then we'll process it through UVM to make sure that the right channels are signing that. That way, again, should anything happen, you personally are not liable, and the proper insurance is in place for 4-H opportunities. With insurance, we need to make sure that that's in place, and that's part of the whole contracting piece. Liability insurance for 4-H opportunities is always in place, regardless of where those opportunities happen. Sometimes, though, those facilities that you rent do require a piece of paper to prove that that insurance is in place, and that's called a certificate of liability. That request form is up online, and again, I'll show you where you can find that. And that's an easy thing to go ahead and make happen. We have other types of insurances as well that should be in place when we provide 4-H opportunities. There is medical insurance, which is considered supplemental medical. Should any 4-H member, or in the case of, let's say, a horse show or a special event, any spectator, physically get hurt and they need medical insurance, the 4-H insurance that we have will come in, again, as a secondary piece of insurance in case their own insurance is either not there or not in place, or doesn't provide comprehensive coverages. So as a precaution, we do take out a very inexpensive policy. And once again, if you've got questions on that, reach out to your 4-H educator. We do also have a risk management checklist online, and I'll show you that in just a few moments. When you rent out a facility, or even if you're going to have an event at your home, there's a variety of steps to think through. Do you have a phone in place? Do you have, are there large holes as you're walking to the front door that somebody could step in and hurt their foot? Do you have a first aid kit handy? So this checklist that we have walks you through all the things that you should consider before you bring a lot of people into a given location for a 4-H opportunity. Again, it's thinking about things that are being proactive and thinking about concerns that might arise should somebody get hurt at your location. The last piece I want to talk about with facilities and accommodations is the Americans with Disabilities Act and providing equal opportunity. Of course, 4-H does not discriminate, and we do have an obligation to make sure that our programs are accessible to everyone. Oftentimes, we need to ask that question of our participants if they need an accommodation to participate, and then it's up to you to learn that information and share it with your 4-H educator, and we will work to figure out how to best to provide those accommodations. The 4-H program does have the need to cover any expense associated with those opportunities, and we're happy to do that, but we need enough time. So if you are going to be promoting a 4-H event, we need to have a very specific date listed where potential participants can ask for that opportunity, or the accommodation to be made. If you need a sign language interpreter, if somebody needs a ramp to get into a building, those types of things, we need to be able to provide those types of accommodations. Again, always reach out to your 4-H educator if you have any questions. Activities. So, of course, there are a lot of different activities within the 4-H world. Project-specific things, horse, dairy, we've got helmet rules, we need signed waivers that make people aware that there is a potential risk in the activities in which they're participating. Shooting sports opportunities certainly needs various gear, such as air protection. So as you engage in specific activities, you want to think through what we can do to make people as safe as possible. Are we following all the rules of the facility? Do you have the right safety precautions and safety gear that you need? Please know that 4-H clubs cannot own animals, land, or vehicles. Volunteers may own those things, and they can be leased or loaned, but again, they shouldn't be owned by a 4-H club because that also perhaps, there's insurance stipulations and issues around that as well. Risk management is a very challenging subject, and there's no, it's not very black and white. There's lots of gray in it. So again, as I'm going to reiterate with each passing slide, reach out to your 4-H educator with your unique situation. Lots of things. We talked about health insurance and special event insurance. For driving, we've also talked about who can be in the car, but all drivers, whether they're volunteers or parents who may be driving on behalf of 4-H activities, should fill out the DMV request and authorization form, which can be found online as well. We do screen your driving record every 3 years to make sure you don't have any severe motor vehicle challenges. A parking ticket or even a speeding ticket, once every few years is not a huge concern to us, and most likely wouldn't dismiss you from conducting that activity. But certainly something like 4 speeding tickets in a 2-month time frame, or an accident or things like that, we might look at. Also, please know that if there is any history, such as challenges with your driving record or even a criminal background check from 20 years ago, those types of things may not prohibit you from being a 4-H volunteer, but it may prohibit some of the activities in which you can engage in being a 4-H volunteer. So keep that in mind, and also know that we're putting these rules in place for both the youth protection, but as well as yourself as well. We've talked about overnight events and sleeping arrangements and chaperone ratios. Again, it changes based upon the location of that overnight event and the age of the youth. swimming and other activities that you might engage in your club programs or special events, we need to think through, is there a waiver signed? Do parents know that your participants are going to be swimming? Do they know they're going to be riding a horse? And have we gotten the appropriate authorization for it? If they're going to be swimming, are you going to a lake and you're the only person there and you've never taken a water safety course? Or are you going somewhere where there's a lifeguard and there's lots of opportunities for somebody to, if somebody does get hurt or finds themselves in a challenging situations, people will be around and prepared to help. So think through the location, think through the activities that are going to be occurring at that location, and whether or not you need further assistance on that. We do advise that 4-H volunteers have some sort of medical, not a background, but have taken a Red Cross course, they know basic first aid, and that they do have a first aid kit with them, maybe in their car, just in case anything happens. And if that's not the case, I would recommend that you or a club volunteer or maybe a certain parent goes ahead and takes a Red Cross certification course and does secure a first aid kit to have on hand at all 4-H club activities. Here's a copy on the right-hand side of your screen, the Reducing Risk at 4-H Special Events Checklist. Again, this can be found on our website as well. But it does help you think through some of the things that you need to consider as you're going to have a 4-H event, whether it's a club meeting or something larger scale. Again, do you have the accident insurance and the special events insurance taken out? Do you need that certificate of liability for the facility? Have you completed all the necessary paperwork with a site manager? Have the contracts gone through UVM and have the appropriate signatures? Do you have a first aid kit? What about a cell phone? Is there a way for you to reach parents or parents to reach you? And are there emergency numbers available? Do you have the adequate number of the adequate number of chaperones secured? Are the grounds free of any rusty objects? Are they clearly marked off limits? You know, is that big hole right by your front door filled in, or do you have it roped off? What else? Any harmful equipment, is it secured? If you're going to be in a barn, is there any kind of, I don't know, poisons or toxins or anything that you might use? Are they clearly labeled or off limits, even better? Let's see. Are exits marked and accessible? Have we asked about the reasonable accommodations? Does anybody need accommodations to participate in the events? So as you can see, this is a pretty comprehensive checklist, and that's available up on our website. And the other thing that I wanted to share is that if you do provide opportunities in a farm or barn type situation, or even a backyard space where you have chickens and other various forms of livestock, we have a whole website dedicated to farm safety, very basic farm safety. But it's a good introduction. There's a game that's suitable for those really ages 10 plus to play. And then there's all sorts of resources on that particular site as well that might be beneficial for you to use with your club and help raise awareness that those learning opportunities exist. So here you can see pictures of our website if you haven't been there before. It's uvm.edu/extension, and you can click on a clover at the bottom of the screen, or on the left-hand side you find 4-H and Youth. And then when you click on that piece, it will bring you to this page right here where it says 4-H and Youth on the green bar, and then here's the first arrow. You would click on Volunteers and Educators. Once you click on Volunteers and Educators, it brings you to this next section. It drops down. And under Leader Resources is where the majority of our policies and forms and everything really that we've talked about today, you can find more information in detail. And then once you click on that, there are 3 primary locations that will give you the information that you're looking for. The policy book that I spoke of in the beginning, what are 4-H policies for volunteers and staff? That's very comprehensive. It'll share the information about chaperones, overnight accommodations, ratios of youth, why we have a youth protection clause, even things about money management and how to ensure that we're keeping the club monies as safe as possible, and if you're at a event where you're collecting fees, how to make sure that nobody could possibly accuse you or anybody else of taking money. All of this is laid out pretty clearly in the policies book. And then the second 2 arrows, the forms and fact sheets, are where most of our, as that says, forms and fact sheets reside. The the risk management checklist is there. Medical waivers are there. What's the word? Medicine. If you've got a youth that's taking medicine, there should be a form filled out that gives you permission to distribute. And then that last arrow, risk management, is where you can find more information about the special events insurance through American Income Life that we recommend you have as supplemental medical. So in summary, the key things to remember is to really plan ahead. Contracts need to be signed. We need screened volunteers and parents appropriate to the number of youth, and that safety plans are in place. And that you review that risk management checklist, and when in doubt, ask your 4-H educator. So there's lots of information there. I know it's not the most exciting subject, but if we all think ahead a little bit better and just think through the types of scenarios that we might see with our 4-H members, we can do a lot to eliminate and actually reduce the number of situations that that might pose problems to our 4-H members and participants. And I think we can instill that culture of safety. So thanks so much, and I'll take this opportunity to see if there's any questions.
Anyone who has questions, if you're on the teleconference line, you can type right into the chat box, or you can raise your hand and, well, actually the raise your hand doesn't work at the moment. Just type right into the chat box if you have a question on risk management. And if not, just take Sarah's very strong advice that, if there's anything in doubt or question that you think pertains to risk, don't dismiss that. Always ask your educator, because it really is a protection for you. And so the more questions you ask, the less risk that you as a volunteer would have to potentially assume. So it's always just good practice to run things by your educator. Well, Sarah, I don't see any questions coming in, so I would like to thank you for your excellent presentation today on risk management. As I said, we did record this, so it will be up on our website, and I'm going to actually turn the recording off at this time. So thank you very much.
Thank you.